what's going on, you guys? Nick here with Nick Strength and Power. I've got a couple of interesting stories for you guys today. The first story that I've got for you guys today, the latest physique update from today of Quinton Uriah, a.k.a. Quint Beastwood. Now, we now know, here at a little over 4 weeks out from the New York Pro, that Quinton is going to be joining that lineup. So it looks like we're not going to have to wait very long to see his return to the stage. And in this kind of era that we're in right now of young bodybuilding talent that are making really big waves pretty quickly, I think he's going to end up being one of those guys. Now, this is not going to be an easy lineup for him, which is what I like about this decision. You've got Tony O'Burton in this lineup, who was just second at the South America show. You've also got Nick Walker making his return in this lineup. Apparently, Martin Fitzwater, who just won the Detroit Pro, is also going to continue on to the New York Pro. You've also got Beef Stew in this lineup, another young, talented guy. And I also kind of wonder, even though he hasn't said anything about this, he did want to do the New York Pro, I think it was last year. Carlos Thomas Jr., who was going to do the Arnold Classic South America, he missed it because he had a death in the family, which is understandable. But I wonder if he continued his prep for a closer show like New York. I think that could be a possibility. Again, he hasn't said anything along those lines, but maybe. So Quint Beastwood, I think, is a guy that has everything that it seems like bodybuilding fans are interested in these days. I think the same things that are so appealing about Samson Dauda and even Andrew Jacked are the same attributes that really make Quinton's physique so impressive. And I think he's taller than both of them. You can correct me if I'm wrong, Quint, but I think he's 6'2". But he's tall. He's got this really big frame to carry a lot of muscle, and the result of that is he still maintains a very aesthetic physique while being a really big dude. And I think that's the main thing that people are excited about in seeing him return, is all these updates that we've seen him post over the past, several months or so after taking a bit of time off. He looks like he's put on a significant amount of size. He's a big dude. So if he brings some gnarly conditioning to this New York show, he's going to be a real factor here. I mean, when you watch him pose in this video, look at the upper body width, the shoulder width to waist ratio, especially in poses like that front double bicep. It's insane. His legs look like they've come up. He's actually got, I want to point this out again, he's actually got insane calves. But to me, it looks like his legs have come up. The separation looks deep. The separation looks good. Again, this video would put him a little bit over, just a day, maybe 2 days over 4 weeks out. And I also think it's interesting that Matt Jansen is coaching him, who is also the coach of Nick Walker, who Nick Walker obviously is making his comeback at the New York Pro. And we did get an update from Nick Walker today as well, which would put him also just over 4 weeks out, with pretty gnarly looking upper body. I think Nick is really deserving of his nickname, the Mutant, because I think when you think of all the pros right now, he really is the freak of freaks. Pound for pound, for his frame, the amount of just dense, thick, round muscle that he's got, he looks like a mutant. He absolutely does. And like I've said before, I'm a fan of Nick, but I'm going to be honest with you guys. In the updates that we've seen where he's shown his lower body, it does worry me a bit as to whether or not he's going to be able to fully come back, at least at this show, from the hamstring injury he suffered late last year. So while, yes, in this picture, the upper body looks like typical freaky Nick Walker upper body, crazy deep abs, demonstrating really good midsection control. And then the picture that Nick posted a couple days ago where he's in his parents' basement, his lower body looks better there than it looked in the previous update that I have in the back of my mind. But kind of the criticism of Nick at the Arnold Classic that he lost to Samson was both the legs look downsized, in particular the quads, which is interesting because it's his hamstring that's injured, but his quads look downsized and the separation wasn't really deep enough there. They do look better in the update from his parents' basement, but then just maybe a week or a few days prior to that, he had posted this update where, if we're being honest, you're really not seeing deep separation in his quads. You're just not. Then when you look at how crazy full and pumped his upper body is, the legs just don't match. So I want to give him the benefit of the doubt and say it could be the lighting, it could be the angle, because they did look better in the parents' basement picture. But when we did see him on stage at that Arnold Classic, that was the main thing a lot of people were saying was his quads didn't look great. So I kind of wonder if he already kind of had a little issue with getting his quads deeply separated prior to the injury. And then with the injury, maybe he just wasn't able to train them the same, and perhaps that issue could have gotten worse. So frankly, it does make me wonder a little bit, could we all, or most of us, I should say, be wrong in assuming that Nick is just going to win this show? Is there a chance, and this is probably where a lot of people are going to be torn in the comment section, but is there a chance that one of these young up-and-comers, or even a guy like Tonio that's been around a little bit longer, is able to beat Nick at the New York Pro, and maybe Nick isn't just going to slam dunk, hands down, take this home? Or do you think I'm totally tripping, his legs look fine, and he's going to win this easy? And next up in the news, one of those guys that I just mentioned that's also a young up-and-comer doing the New York Pro is Beef Stew, and we just got an update from Beef Stew yesterday. A front and a back shot. He shows the front and the back in most poses here. I think it might be all, yeah, it's all 8 poses. And look, Stu is not a guy that's necessarily known for his legs being a strong point. In fact, I think maybe his quads are his weakest point. But again, if I draw your attention to these pictures, really nice deep separation in his legs. And again, I don't think that's something that most people consider to be one of his strong points. But compared to Nick, we will say from a size standpoint, Nick's legs are bigger. But look at how deep the separation in Stu's legs are. Not to mention, we just saw Martin Fitzwater in Detroit with really impressive legs. His quads, because keep in mind, he was next to maybe some of the freakiest legs in the IFBB today. Good Vito, Vitaly Ugonikov. And Martin hung in there really, really well next to Good Vito, in my opinion. I think Martin's quads looked great. And plus, for all we know, maybe Good Vito also goes on to do this New York Pro because he still needs to qualify for the Olympia due to the fact that he still hasn't won a show. So I just imagine in this lineup for Nick particularly, especially if you had a guy like Vito in there, these guys that are going to have separated legs, maybe crazy quads like Vito, might bring out that weakness even more in Nick if Nick is next to a guy like Vito. And again, we don't even know that Vito's doing it. I'm just saying hypothetically. So I'm curious to hear what you guys think in the comments below. What are your top 3 predictions for the New York Pro based on who we know is doing it for sure so far, being Tonio, Nick, Martin, and now Quint Beastwood? Now, next up in the news, Akim Williams has announced that his next show is going to be the Toronto Pro, which he's 8 weeks out currently from. Now, the only other guy that I know for sure is doing that show is Hassan Mostafa. I'm a little bit surprised, honestly, that after as well as we saw Akim do in both the Arnold Classic Ohio and the Arnold Classic UK, that he chose to opt out of the Detroit Pro. It looks like he's not doing the New York Pro because he says in this physique update that he's 8 weeks out. And perhaps he just wants a break, or maybe he's looking for the Olympia qualification. He's already competed twice this year. Maybe he doesn't want to, be too hard on his body, get that Olympia qualification, maybe at a smaller show like Toronto, because obviously the New York Pro isn't looking like the easiest place for someone to go win a show to get to the Olympia. So if he just wants to get to the Olympia stage and not really work his body too much, he'd probably have to compete again after New York because he likely wouldn't win that show. So I would have to imagine that's probably part of his strategy here in waiting until Toronto, which is still, 2 months away, essentially. And then also in the process, giving his body a nice break between those Arnolds that he did and then Toronto, which would be almost, a 3-month break in totality. Now, next up in the news, we did get a physique update from both Rubiel Mosquera and Michael Krizo side by side. 2 mass monsters that both came from the other IFBB, the IFBB Elite Pro. I still think that Krizo is going to do the Spain show, which is in June rather. And Rubiel says he's doing the Dubai show, which is in the end of July. And I think the conditioning here reflects that. I think Michael Krizo looks significantly more conditioned than Rubiel does, at least in this one most muscular shot, which arguably is probably one of his strongest poses. Krizo's strongest pose is next to his front double bicep. And one thing I'll say about Michael Krizo is I like the fact that prior to coming to the IFBB Pro League, he had a lot of hype online and social media. And then when he got here, he really delivered. He competes pretty frequently. He does a couple shows outside of the Olympia. He's gotten to the Olympia twice. He's looking to make that 3 times this year. And Rubiel, we've only seen compete just that one time. And he's committed to several other shows. Hasn't showed up, hasn't competed. I really want to see him start delivering on some of the hype that he's getting, because he's still getting a lot. I mean, for a couple weeks there, maybe a month or so, when he did that show and competed against like Samson Dowda and them, he was like having a little bit of a viral moment. A lot of people were talking about Neckzilla on YouTube, on Instagram. People posting pictures of how crazy he looked. And then he committed to these Arnolds, and he's just not doing them. So I hope that he actually does show up and do the Dubai Pro, because at least with Krizo, he had this social media hype going for him. And he cashed in on it. He's done what he said he's going to do. He competes, he qualifies, he goes to the Olympia. He's done it 2 times now. And throughout the history of bodybuilding, there's been these various mass monsters in every era that we look back and say, how did this guy never, do well at the Olympia? Or how did this guy never get to the Olympia? How did this guy never win the Olympia? These kind of mass monsters that got forgotten about. And a lot of them, they didn't compete very often, or they missed their peak in conditioning when they did compete. But there were still plenty of freaky pictures to look back on of these mass monsters. And to me, I kind of have that feeling with Rubiel. Is yes, we've got insane pictures of him that he looks like he could win the Olympia, but he's not really showing the actual competitive side of his physique. And like the same with Krizo. Krizo in the other IFBB did a shitload of shows in that other IFBB, and Rubiel did significantly less shows than Krizo did. Krizo won basically every title they had to offer. Rubiel didn't. So I could see in like 10, 15, 20 years, Rubiel being a guy that people look back at this era of bodybuilding and saying, how did that guy never make it to the top? And that could be why. Maybe he just doesn't show up to a lot of these shows. Now, the final story that I have for you guys today, we actually did get a recap from head judge Tyler Mannion for the Detroit Pro, Martin versus Good Vito. And he did say essentially exactly what we all kind of thought. He felt that Good Vito was more conditioned at prejudging, but he did say that he felt like Martin still won, or he had Martin winning prejudging still, which is what the scorecards reflected at prejudging. And then he said he felt like Martin came back just tremendously, significantly better at finals and then really solidified that win. But I think the more significant part about this is it confirms a couple things. The fact that we got this recap for the Detroit Pro, number one, shows us that they're not just planning on doing these recaps for the bigger shows like the Arnold or the Olympia. It looks like we're probably going to get them for all of the shows that Tyler Mannion personally attends and judges, but it also confirms that it looks like we're not going to get them for shows that Tyler did not personally judge, which I think will add to a little bit of the controversy with like the South America Arnold, for example. A lot of people felt that result was very controversial. I still see YouTube videos popping up like in the last couple days of people like roasting Raphael, how out of shape he was. But because Tyler wasn't there judging it himself in South America, he didn't do a recap based on what the other judges felt the result was, which I think is interesting. And I think will further fuel that speculation and kind of that narrative that maybe Raphael got preferential treatment because he was in his hometown. So I think we learned kind of a good thing and a bad thing here. It looks like, I think this is going to be very beneficial, the fact that Tyler looks like is planning on doing this for every show that he judges, not just the big ones, which is fantastic. But it looks like he will not be commenting on how other judges judged the show that he did not judge, even though it was an IFBB show. So kind of an interesting standard there. But that's going to wrap it up for the video, guys. I hope you did, in fact, enjoy it. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, click that bell notification icon if you have not already. And as always, I love you guys, appreciate you guys. Nick Strength and Power, signing out. All right, guys, don't forget to click that like button and subscribe to this channel if you enjoy the content. Also, check out my Instagram at NickStrengthPower. my Facebook page, which is simply Nick Strength and Power, my secondary YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Vlogs, for vlogs and bonus content that you will not see on this channel, and consider subscribing to my third YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Pokemon, which is all things Pokemon and trading card games, completely unrelated to this channel. So if you're into that, give that one a look. And all links to merchandise and social media will be in the description box below. If you guys want a Nick Strength and Power t-shirt, that will be in the Shopify link below. Have a great day.